name is Alexander, and today I'll be guiding a yoga experience which will begin with a brief centering exercise which will involve aspects of meditation and breath work with the aim of enhancing somatic awareness and vitality. Before moving into the rest of our practice, we'll then introduce some movement to the body through what we might consider a warm-up or some dynamic exercises. Following this, we'll explore a series of static physical postures. And to conclude, we'll engage in a deliberate relaxation exercise to integrate the effects of our practice. You're welcome to use any props you might find supportive, and you don't need anything but yourself. Having said this, if you're on a smooth surface like I am here, you might find it helpful to have a mat of some kind with some grip to provide some traction and reduce the likelihood of slipping. It's also important to note that while I will be offering some guidance on what to do with your body and your mind, ultimately these are just invitations or suggestions because you are the expert of your body, mind, and your experience. And so if anything that I offer by way of instruction doesn't land for you, doesn't resonate, feels off in any way, honor this. Trust yourself and do what you feel you need in any given moment. Okay, to begin, I'll invite you to find a position lying on your back with a bend in the hip and the knee joints such that the soles of the feet are in contact with the floor. We want to position the feet about hip distance apart, and then we're going to allow the knees to knock in toward one another such that they're in a self-sustaining posture. So the head's in contact with the floor as well, and the arms can be positioned alongside the body with the palms facing upward, if that feels okay for the shoulder joint. If you are working with what you might consider a nervous energy in the body, perhaps an anxious quality of the mind, you may find it supportive actually to place the palms facing downward. Conversely, if you're working with, we could call it a sluggish or low energy in the body, perhaps a low or depressed quality of mind, you may find it supportive to actually open across the chest, maybe placing the arms out away from the body in a T-like position, or maybe you even wish to bend the elbows such that the arms are positioned almost like a cactus with the palms facing upward. So finding a position that's going to be conducive for arriving fully in your practice. So not just physically, but bringing your whole being. If you're working with or have an intention for your practice today, you may wish to call this to mind. Alternatively, if you don't, you may wish to set the intention to cultivate qualities of curiosity, openness, and acceptance toward yourself and your experience. Also setting an intention to rest your attention here and now in your body, in your practice. And if, or perhaps more appropriately when, we notice that our attention has wandered elsewhere, perhaps into thinking about the past or the future, we simply notice this and gently, but without reservation, we bring our attention back to where we intend it to be. So I'll invite you to just perhaps quickly scan through your body, noticing any regions of tension, discomfort, restriction, blockage. It's almost like we're taking inventory of what's here for us now. And more importantly than what we find is our attitude toward this. So no matter what's here for us, this is okay. And now I'll invite you to bring your attention toward your breathing. Perhaps noticing if the breath is deep and slow, or perhaps fast and shallow, something in between. And again, whatever it is, that's okay. But if it's comfortable, I'll invite you to begin to deepen the breath. And so on the next in-breath, drawing a little bit more air into the lungs than you usually would. And as you do so, you might notice an expansion in the thorax or the torso region, perhaps particularly in the belly or the abdomen. So as you breathe in, I'll invite you to really allow, maybe even exaggerate this expansion, beginning in the belly region and then working up the torso in a wave-like fashion into the middle or the lower rib cage, middle of the thorax, and then into the chest and the upper chest region. And on the out-breath, just letting go. So you'll notice that the in-breath is a fairly active process. It requires some effort and engagement of musculature to lift the ribs and draw the air from outside to the inside of our body. Whereas the out-breath is largely a passive process, more of a letting go, a releasing, a relaxing. You may even notice that these qualities of the breath are reflected in our state of mind. So when we're breathing in, you may notice a slight uplift or increase in alertness, wakefulness in the mind. And conversely, on the out-breath, with the relaxing, the releasing, and the letting go, we may notice a relaxed quality to the mind. You may also notice a brief pause at the top of the in-breath. In other words, after the in-breath, but before the out-breath has started. And likewise, another pause at the bottom of the out-breath. So after the out-breath, but before the next in-breath has commenced. So I'll invite you to continue this way of breathing and this quality of attention to the breath throughout the duration of our practice today. I'll also invite you to use the breath as a guide for how we move our body. Both the range of motion and perhaps the level of exertion that we emit. So to get a feel for this, when you're ready, I'll invite you to separate the knees if they were joined, keeping the feet positioned where they are. Taking a deep breath in, and then on the out breath, we're going to allow the knees to fall toward the right. They may come into contact with the floor, they may not. And then on the in-breath, we're bringing the knees back up, pointing toward the ceiling. And then on the next out-breath, allowing the knees to fall toward the left. In-breath, knees come back through center. Out-breath to the right. So just moving through this almost like windshield wiper fashion with the lower extremities in coordination with your breathing. Enjoying the massage-like sensation this gives rise to on the tissues of the backside of the pelvis. And then on your next in-breath, drawing these back through center once again, and just pausing them here. Now on the next in-breath, we're going to extend the hips and the knees, reaching the soles of the feet toward one side of the room, while pulling the toes up toward the head, and then reaching the arms up overhead as well. So the soles, or let's say the heels of the feet, and the tips of the fingers are reaching in opposite directions, creating as much length as possible through the spine and the extremities. So on the in-breath, we're finding length, and on the out-breath, without sacrificing this length, we're relinquishing unnecessary tension. And then on the next out breath, we're going to bring the knees in toward the chest, placing the hands on the top of the shins, curling the chin in toward the chest, and then curling into a little ball. And with each subsequent out-breath, you may find you're able to curl just a little bit tighter without exerting yourself too heavily here. Then on the next in-breath, relaxing this posture, coming back into the one in which we started, and then rolling to the left or the right, whatever is more comfortable, and pressing yourself up into a seated posture. So if it's accessible to you, I'll invite you to find a cross-legged position. And if not, feel free to sit however you can. You can also kneel if that's easier for you. We're not going to be here for long, so if it's not overly comfortable, that's okay. That's certainly the case for me. You'll notice my knees are high off the ground because my hips aren't that mobile. So if that's the case for you as well, this is okay. What we're going to do is to begin to introduce some movement into the spine. So to begin, we're going to work with what's referred to as lateral or side-to-side bending or flexion. So on an in-breath, we're going to reach the arms up overhead, finding as much length through the spine as possible. So reaching through the crown of the head and the fingertips, and without compromising this length, on the out-breath, we're going to lower the right hand to the floor and reach the left arm up and over toward the right side of the space. Breathing in, once again, coming through center, finding as much length through the spine as possible. Out-breath, this time, left hand comes to the floor, right arm reaches up and over. And so the intention here, like I said, is to find as much length as we can on the in-breath, and then on the out-breath, without creating any kind of compressing or crunching on the side of our torso, same direction in which we're leaning, we're looking to create as much length as possible on the opposite side. So increasing the space between the top of the hip and the lower rib on the side opposite to which we're leaning. So just continuing this for a few more repetitions at your own pace in coordination with the breath. And on your next in-breath, coming back through center, once again, finding as much length through the spine as possible. And on the out-breath, relaxing the arms down alongside the body. And then transitioning onto the hands and knees. So the aim here is to position the wrists underneath the elbows, underneath the shoulders, having the arms roughly at about a 90-degree angle to the torso. And likewise, the knees are positioned underneath the hips, and we have about a 90-degree angle of between the upper leg and the torso. So I may or may not be achieving that, but that's the intention. And then we're looking to find what feels like a neutrally positioned spine. So acknowledging that there are natural curves to the spine, looking to find what feels somewhat neutral, so not flexed and not extended. Finding as much length as possible, again, from the crown of the head through the tailbone. On the next in-breath, we are going to allow the belly to fall as we reach the crown of the head and the tailbone toward the ceiling. And then on the out-breath, we're pressing into the palms of the hands, into the knees, and reaching the middle of the back toward the ceiling. So On the in-breath, this is what's referred to as extension of the spine. And then on the out-breath, we're finding flexion. So on the in-breath, as we were exploring before, the belly expands. And then on the out-breath, the belly contracts. And you may even wish to accentuate this contraction on the next out-breath by engaging the muscles of the abdomen and pulling the belly button or the navel toward the spine, which hollows out the belly or the abdomen region. It makes a little bit more space for the flexion to occur between the lower ribs and the pelvis. So as with all of these exercises, going at your own pace, in coordination with the breath, and you may even find you're able to gradually and gently, of course, increase the range of motion with each subsequent repetition. Next time passing through center, pausing here, reestablishing this neutrally aligned position for the spine, aiming to sustain that length that you find in the spine. And then on the next in-breath, we're firmly planting through the right hand, and we're going to open the chest toward the left side of the space, reaching the left arm toward the ceiling, and perhaps allowing your gaze to follow. And then on the out-breath, relaxing this, or relinquishing this twist, and actually threading the left arm underneath the right shoulder, such that the left shoulder and the left ear come close, maybe even into contact with the floor. So breathing in, we're opening toward the left side of the space, fingertips and gaze reach toward the ceiling. Out breath, threading the left arm underneath the right and finding this rotation in the other direction. And after the next in-breath, bringing the left hand back into contact with the floor, pausing for a second, checking the alignment of the spine, reestablishing the neutral position, and then finding this same exercise now on the other side. So on the in-breath, chest opens toward the right side of the room, and reaching the right arm toward the ceiling, and then on the out-breath, threading the right arm underneath the left shoulder, bringing the right shoulder and right ear close to, maybe in contact with the floor. Breathing in, rotating to the right, gaze and fingertips reach toward the ceiling. Out-breath, rotating to the left. So after the next in-breath, bringing the right hand back into contact with the floor. Once again, finding neutrally aligned spine. And this time, we're going to press the hips back in space, creating a deeper bend at the hip and the knee joints. And if it's possible, bringing the buttocks region close to the heels. Chest moves toward the top of the thighs, and the forehead will come close to, maybe even in contact with the floor. The arms can reach overhead if that is inviting. Alternatively, the arms can rest alongside the body. So finding a posture that provides an experience of relative rest. In other words, one that doesn't require much effort or exertion to sustain. Taking this moment of refuge to perhaps check in with yourself. Noticing where your attention is. Perhaps recalling your intention for today's practice. And if you wish, simply beginning again. So maybe our attention has wandered a number of times. Maybe we've been thinking. This is okay. With the gift of a new moment, we have the opportunity to do something different. So in a moment, we're going to transition into a standing posture. And you can do so however you like. So you can remain standing in the same direction in which you find yourself now. I'm going to turn 90 degrees for the sake of facing the camera. And what we're going to do is build a foundational standing posture from the ground up. So positioning the feet about hip distance apart, toes are facing forward. If you can, you may wish to actually splay the toes, getting as wide as possible, creating a wide and sturdy base of support. And then we're also going to position ourselves such that our center of mass is somewhat central on our base of support. So perhaps rocking front to back a little bit and finding that middle point. Likewise, moving from side to side, equally distributing our weight between the left and the right foot. And then you may even wish to actually engage, albeit lightly, the musculature on the bottom of the feet. So it creates a little bit of a tenting and a sense of uplift. The knees are relatively straight, which is not to say that they're locked out. So you might have a soft bend in the knee. There's a gentle engagement of the musculature of the upper legs, maybe pulling on the kneecaps just a little bit. And now bringing our attention to the pelvic region. So you may find it supportive to envision the pelvis almost like a bowl, perhaps one containing fluid. And the intention is not to spill, either front to back or side to side. And so taking a moment to feel side to side, aiming to have the hips level in space, so the left and the right are not higher than one or the other. And then also feeling front to back. So for a lot of us to find this kind of neutrally aligned position of the pelvis, it may actually involve a slight pulling of the pubic bone up toward the navel, which creates a little bit of a posterior or backward tilt of the pelvis. Then bringing your attention to the spine, so intending to stack the vertebrae on top of one another, again in a neutral, somewhat straight position, one which is long. The chest is open. We're almost reaching with the breastbone upward, or the sternum. The shoulders are relaxed, down. You may even engage the musculature on the backside of the ribcage to pull them backward a little bit, such that the neck is long. And then the arms are positioned alongside the body, palms facing forward or slightly inward if that's comfortable. And then we're going to reach through the crown of the head, which will involve a slight tucking of the chin and maybe a moving of the ears backward so that they're positioned over the shoulders. And from here, you can actually then extend the arms up overhead to find your full expression of what is sometimes referred to as mountain pose. So in this position, like all postures to varying degrees, you'll notice there is some level of exertion required to sustain the posture in a dignified manner. But there's also the possibility that we are overexerting and perhaps introducing tension into tissues, particularly muscles, where it's not necessary and ultimately not serving. In fact, it is depleting and draining. So just taking a moment to feel this out. Where are we required to be engaged to, again, sustain the posture with integrity, but where also can we let go? So perhaps the muscles of the face are tense. We might have a bit of a grim look. Not that we can see it, but others may. Maybe the tongue is pressed against the roof of the mouth. If so, just softening and relaxing this. Maybe the shoulders have hiked up toward the ears and our neck has kind of disappeared. So just relaxing into the shoulder region. And reacquainting with our breathing. So we can use our breath as a tool to find our full expression of the posture, particularly on the in-breath, while noticing any areas of unnecessary tension, and then on the out-breath, just relaxing and releasing and letting this go. Maybe it doesn't go anywhere, and that's okay too, in which case we're simply letting it be. But we're not feeding into it, we're not exacerbating the condition. So on the next in-breath, finding your full expression of the posture, and then on the out-breath, relaxing the arms down alongside the body and letting it go. So again, you can stay exactly where you are. I'm going to rotate once again. Having said that, if you are maybe in the middle of or toward the back of your mat, you may wish to actually move closer toward the front. So finding a mountain-like posture that we just explored, close to the front of the mat. And then we're going to transition most of our body weight onto the left foot. And then on an in-breath, we're going to draw the right knee toward the ceiling. And then on the out-breath, stepping that leg back about a leg's distance behind us. Quick thing to note here, the farther that trailing leg is behind us, the more exertion that's going to be required to sustain the posture. Whoa, just about lost my balance. So, finding one that is balanced. And again, we're just going to build this posture from the ground up here. So starting with the front, or for me, the left leg, the toes are facing forward. The left knee is positioned over the ankle joint. And if I was to look down, the kneecap is roughly in line with the second or third toe. And I can see, let's say, just the top half of my toes. So my knee's not so far forward that my foot is invisible, and likewise it's not back that I can see the whole lower leg. The trailing knee is relatively extended or straight, and we're reaching with the trailing, or for me, the right heel toward the floor. So mine's not going to touch because I'm not that mobile. For some of you it may, and for some of you it may not, and all is well. And from here, once again, stabilizing the pelvis in space, so you may actually notice that the left hip is hiked up a little bit. If so, gently correcting for that. Bringing the attention to the spine, reaching the sternum up toward the ceiling. The shoulders are relaxed downward and maybe back a little bit. We're reaching through the crown of the head, which involves a slight tucking of the chin, pressing of the ears backwards as they're positioned over the shoulder joints. And if you're having issues balance-wise in this posture, it may be supportive to reach the arms out away from the body in a T-like position. Alternatively, you can reach the arms up overhead, which is going to be less supportive for balance. So once we've engaged the posture, we sustain. And reacquaint with our breathing. So as we explored in the former posture, on the in-breath, noticing areas of tension that are necessary, that help us find full expression of the posture, and noticing areas of our body that are unnecessarily tense, and gently intending to soften into these areas, relax, release. Allow this tension to dissipate downward with the force of gravity. So it's not a process that requires more effort. It's the opposite. It's effortless, very natural. And when you're ready, you can lower the arms alongside the body. We're going to transition the weight, most of our weight, into the leading leg, and then actually press the right foot back up to meet the left toward the top of our mat, and pause here. Again, in a rendition of the mountain pose with the arms alongside the body. Reacquainting with your breathing. Just noticing the effects of that posture on your body, in your mind. Maybe interesting to note any differences or similarities a general comparison from left to right. Equally interesting, there may be layers on top of any discrepancies between the left and the right of an inclination to want to kind of balance things out, to equalize. So just holding all of your experience in the space of mindful awareness. And when you're ready, shifting your weight now onto the right foot. And on an in-breath, reaching the left knee toward the ceiling, and then stepping that leg back again, about a leg's distance behind. You know what you're getting yourself into this time around, so positioning that leg accordingly. Again, farther away, or the greater space between feet, the more exertion is going to be required to sustain the posture. So once again, right toes facing forward, right knee positioned over the right ankle joint. Left knee or the trailing knee is extended, trailing heel reaching toward the floor, stabilizing the pelvis in space, aiming to not have the right hip hiked up relative to the left. Reaching long through the spine, from the tailbone to the crown of the head, pressing the sternum upward, shoulders relaxed down and back, chin slightly tucked, ears pressing backward. And then finding a position for the arms that is appetizing. So again, if there's any concern about losing your balance, maybe placing the arms out alongside, or rather away from the body in a T-like posture. Or if you wish, you can bring the arms up overhead to further accentuate that length that we're cultivating in the spine. Noticing that, while we label this a static posture, there's really nothing static about it at all. The body is constantly moving, albeit micro movements, but particularly in the service of supporting our balance. So this constant kind of adjustments, you can feel it in the feet, knees. And what's interesting is we, as the conscious observers of our experience, aren't doing any of it. It's happening all on its own. And all we have to do is get out of our own way and allow that to happen by not trying too hard. You'll also notice that as time goes on, or you may notice the sensation of the body beginning to change. So just becoming curious about this ever-evolving dance. I'm noticing a heightening sensation in my leading upper leg and my lower trailing leg, almost like a burning sensation in the muscle tissue that is increasing the longer we stay here. And also noticing the tendency to want to label our experience unpleasant or pleasant. Get rid of that which we don't like and cling to or grasp that which we do. And just trying to hold it all with an equal and balanced quality of attention. So on the next in-breath, finding as much length as you can, finding your full expression of this lunging posture. And then on the out-breath, shifting the weight into the leading leg and bringing the left leg to meet the right at the top of your mat. And once again, coming into our foundational standing posture here. just noticing the effects of the posture and releasing any tension that's unnecessary to sustain the pose. From here, we're going to introduce a bend or a hinging, a flexion at the hips. Before we do so, if you have a history of disc herniation in the spine, I'll invite you to maintain that relatively straight posture of the spine this whole time. So that may involve hinging at the hips. So the torso moves toward the floor, but we're maintaining that straight spine. And you may place the hands just above the knees to support, or maybe you wish to hang them below. Alternatively, if you do not have a history of disc herniation or any other kind of injury to the spine, and it feels okay, you can further allow this forward fold to grow so that we actually do start rounding and flexing in the spine. And we fold kind of like a lawn chair, so the chest meets the upper thighs. The arms can hang toward the floor, or they can cross over one another. And just taking a moment here to notice both the qualities of exertion and those of passivity or rest. So obviously we are required to exert and engage some of the musculature in the lower extremities to sustain this posture. Otherwise, we would crumble. But at the same time, we're invited to totally relax the upper body if we're in the complete forward fold. So on the in-breath, we're finding length through the legs. And on the out-breath, finding relaxation and relinquishing of tension in the upper body. And then when you're ready, finding your way back into a seated posture on your mat. So sitting with the knees extended and the soles of the feet facing one side of the space, toes are pointing upward, and we're actually pulling the tops of the feet toward the upper body. The sit bones are firmly rooted into the floor, and we are reaching tall and long through the spine, from the sacrum to the crown of the head. And on an in-breath, we're going to draw the right knee toward the ceiling, placing the right foot on the outside of the left knee, and then placing the inside of the left elbow around the right knee. On an in-breath, we're growing tall and long through the spine, and then on the out-breath, we're rotating toward the right side of the space, positioning the right hand into contact with the floor, and then allowing this rotation of the spine to grow such that our head even turns to the right, if that feels okay for the neck. And if it's comfortable, you may even wish to allow your gaze to focus in the right corners of the eyes. So on the in-breath, emphasizing the length of the spine. And on the out breath, allowing the rotation to grow in a non-forceful or aggressive manner. Now the next in-breath, relaxing the twist, coming back through center, extending the right leg out in front of the body, finding that length in the spine. Once again, just checking in, reacquainting with your breathing. Noticing the consequences of the posture, any differences between the left and the right side of the body, whatever you may. And then when you're ready, bringing the left foot to come on the outside of the right knee. Right elbow meets the left knee, and we're opening the chest toward the left now, placing the left hand in contact with the floor for support and to facilitate that uplift and that length in the spine. Reaching through the crown of the head and then maybe allowing the head to turn over the left shoulder, gaze the left corner of the eyes. So in breath, finding length, out breath, relinquishing tension. And being sure that we are kind of fully present and equally inhabited in our body, despite the kind of radical twist we have going on here. So just checking in, can you still feel your right foot? Are the toes still reaching toward the ceiling? Are you aware of the sole of your left foot in contact with the floor? Of course, if you begin to notice any kind of numbness or tingling or otherwise neurological noise, do relinquish the posture and come back through center. And in fact, let's all do that now. So coming back through center. And then when you're ready, we are going to come back into a position similar to how we started the class. So lying on our back, bend at the hip and the knees, soles of the feet in contact with the floor, head resting on the floor. Arms can be positioned alongside the body. I might advise the palms face downward here, because what we're going to do is on an in-breath, we are going to press into the feet, primarily the heels. So we actually want to be kind of light in the toes here. Press in a way, and actually before we do that, just checking the positions to see that the heels are kind of just out of reach for the hands if we were to reach down with the middle fingers. And then on an in-breath, pressing into the feet, pushing the pelvis toward the ceiling so that we're creating a somewhat straight line from the knee joint to the shoulders. So here we notice the active or engaged quality on the back or the posterior side of our body, particularly in the muscles behind the pelvis, the glutes, behind the upper legs, the hamstrings. You can even accentuate this by aiming to pull the heels toward the shoulders, which will engage the hamstrings even more and kind of relinquish some of the load from the quads on the top of the thighs, which are kind of chronically overutilized muscle groups. And as we've been doing on the out breath, Just relaxing, anywhere you don't need to be holding on. Noticing the dance of sensation throughout the body that's always changing. And simply welcoming all aspects of experience. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, whatever it might be. Now on the next out breath, allowing the hips to come back into contact with the floor. You may wish to shake the legs out a little bit. And we're actually going to extend the legs now. So that the soles of the feet are facing the side of the space opposite to our head. Arms are positioned alongside the body. If accessible, palms facing upward. You can allow the feet to fall away from one another in an externally rotated position. And also allowing your head to be fully supported beneath you. So relaxing all musculature of the neck here. So coming back to our breath, continuing the deeper than usual in-breaths. But this time on the out-breath, we're going to slow it down such that the out-breath takes place over a span of time that is longer relative to the in-breath. So if we breathe in over the span of, let's say, 3 seconds, plus or minus whatever, we're going to breathe out about double that. Breathing out over the span of, let's say, 6 plus or minus a couple seconds. You're just doing this a few times at your own pace. And after a few repetitions, just relinquishing control of the breath altogether and allowing it to restore its natural, unimpeded rhythm. Becoming curious about what this is, where it lands. Once again, briefly scanning through the body, noticing any areas of unnecessary tension or holding. Letting these go, or at least be. And then bringing your attention into the region of your toes. So we're not thinking about our toes, but rather we are feeling our toes from the inside out. Tuning into that sense which allows you to know that your toes simply exist without, let's say, kind of reaching down and feeling for them with the hands or looking down seeing them with the eyes. How is it that you know your toes exist? And connecting with that sense, that way of knowing, referred to as interoception. And then bringing this same quality of attention into the soles of the feet. Becoming aware of the tops of the feet, the heels, the ankles, the lower legs, relaxing the musculature of the lower legs, sensing into the knee joints, the patellae or the kneecaps on top, this space within the knee joints, feeling into the upper legs, relaxing the massive musculature of the upper legs. Allowing it to become completely flaccid. Sensing now into the pelvic region. Relaxing into all tissues of the pelvic region. Feeling the sacrum in contact with the floor. Allowing your awareness to pervade into the belly, the lower belly, the whole abdomen region. The middle of the torso. Feeling into the chest. Feeling the region in the middle of your back where it makes contact with the floor. Relaxing the shoulder blades and allowing them to be fully supported beneath. Relaxing any tension or restriction in the upper chest. Allowing the shoulders to fall down and out. Relaxing the musculature of the upper arms. Feeling into the elbow joints. The forearms. Wrists. Palms of the hands, backs of the hands, feeling into the thumbs, index fingers, middle fingers, fourth fingers, and little fingers. Bringing your attention back into the shoulders, moving into the neck. So softening into the region of the neck. Moving into the base of the skull or the cranium. Feeling where the back of your head makes contact with the floor. Allowing your head to be fully supported. No need to hang on. Relaxing and feeling into the jaw, the tongue, softening the muscles of the cheeks, around the eyes, the forehead, the eyebrows, allowing the eyes to fall heavy into the sockets and be fully supported by them. And just bringing your attention to the space between your eyebrows, a few centimeters downward, toward the floor, that is. And just resting your attention here. There's no thing to do and nowhere to be but here and now. And just abiding in the boundless space of your awareness for the remaining moments of our practice until I bring us back. So gently now, becoming aware once again of your entire body, the space around you, perhaps noticing sounds in the environment. Noticing the movement in the torso created by your breathing. Perhaps introducing some small movement into the toes, the fingers, the ankles, the wrists. You are welcome to remain here as long as you wish. And when you find a sense of completeness, I'll invite you to extend the left arm overhead. Bring the right knee up, sole of the right foot in contact with the floor, and just roll onto your left hand side here for a moment. As a means of easing the transition from the supine or back-lying posture into our eventual return to an upright position in either a seated or a kneeling posture. If your eyes are still closed, you can gently begin to open these, perhaps keeping the gaze low and soft. You may wish to place your hands over your heart and cultivate a sense of gratitude toward yourself for having carved aside the time and space to engage wholeheartedly. And perhaps setting an intention to carry forth the effects of your practice into the rest of your day.